We're live.
All right. Call to order, 6:04 p.m. All right. Well, Bob kind of already covered this, but do we have anyone new to introduce, Bob?
No. I know that Mike Lefevre has been appointed by Exeter Town Council, so I imagine he'll be joining us in the future. And I think they have one more seat to fill from the community over there.
Yeah, I don't know if they've gotten any volunteers yet.
Yeah.
All right. You want to give us an update on the project status, or would that be Lewis?
I'll cover what's going on the kind of on the legislative side of it, and then we'll get into the actual project. But and Lee can help because Lee's been helping out along the way with this, talking to our senators and our reps. We're just engaging in this endless dialogue about them trying to get and the superintendent has also his group, the Superintendent's Association, is trying to put pressure on the legislative bodies to meet and to move quickly on the acts, the enabling legislation, in speeding that process along. And one of the ways they can do it is Senate and House, the bills or the acts get introduced on the Senate and House side. They both approve, enact it. It moves to the governor's desk. It sits there. And typically what happens, it takes 6 days. And on the 7th day, it becomes effective. It's been the history of these kind of bond projects with education that the governor does no action. And by taking no action, on the 7th day, they become effective. What we're trying to get them to do is say, you need to consider it immediately so it becomes effective sooner. We lose that 6-day window that gets compressed. We'll know more about that by the hour, basically, or by the day. We seem to get an update every day. Our deadline is still, we feel if we can get it done by next Friday, we'll be able to have the all-day referendum include the bond election on that same ballot. So we only have to get the community out once to vote on it. So that's the legislative political side of it. The project side, I issued I'll get to that later, but I issued the OPM. We'll discuss that under item 3. I talked to commissioning agents. We can talk about that under item 3. Yesterday, we met with Toronto EDS in O'Day. O'Day does the structural engineering. And I don't know who Lawrence is with. I just know him as Lawrence. He's the acoustical engineer. We had a meeting yesterday. It was about 3 hours. It would be called what I call a shakeout meeting because we're just trying to get a handle on who and where in some of the scope and the depth of the project. And we're going to come back on Monday. We've got a tentative date for 12:30 to get really into identifying what elements of the project are included and what are not included, and what is just so that we're all kind of on equal understanding. I know that's kind of a lightweight. And Lou, Steve, you can jump in at any point.
Or I can add. So we've started really engaging with the engineers and starting the design process. These types of projects, not only because of COVID, but because of wanting to conform with RITE's new standards, have become more complex. It used to be that you would just take a rooftop unit and replace it with another rooftop unit. But now they're concerned about the sound level of the system in the classroom. So we need to, right off the bat, engage an acoustical consultant that will test the sound levels. Then we work with the engineering designers to ensure that the equipment that is specified includes the isolation and sound deadening measures to make sure that we have very quiet classroom systems. Some of those systems include air handlers, if you will, that are in the classrooms right now. So part of the stage 2 work was to relocate those, provide new heat pumps outside the classrooms to deal with that sound problem. And then the structural engineer is very deeply involved, because it's not only that he needs to ensure that the new equipment can be supported by the existing structure, but now there's stricter building codes that make you assess snow loading, so that the size of the new equipment will create snow drifting, and he needs to assess that. So we had an initial meeting there. We plan to meet next week into more detail, to develop more details. One of the issues that we ran into is that above the acoustical ceilings, there's a layer of chipboard, and there's also some hard ceiling. So we're coordinating with Steve. They're being very helpful to be able to make some openness so that we can inspect the structure. Unfortunately, there is no existing building structural drawing. So we have some architecturals that the building was built for, but no structural. We're trying to work with the AIA to see if we could get into Bill Warner's storage to try to find them. But so we're attacking it from a multi-points. It's all standardly done at the beginning of the project. We have done a lot of work already because of the stage 2. And so we are hitting the ground running and working hard to meet the deadline.
Okay.
When do you think you're going to have the prints done, Lou? Roughly.
So we to answer your question is exactly, so we want to be around the middle of March to go out to bid.
Okay.
But to get there, we need to have a new schematic design submittal, a design development submittal, 60% submittal, give right time to approve them, and then go out to bid.
Understood.
Do you expect to have to reinforce, or do you really not know at this point?
So stage 2 carried some design and the cost for reinforcement. We won't know at this time, but if reinforcement is required, that's in the design and in the cost estimates already. Traditionally, you need something. The curbs may not fit exactly. There may be some additional snow drifting. So we expect that we're going to have to do some reinforcement, but not major, because basically they're going in the same location as the existing.
Okay, just curious.
All good questions.
I would just add that I think I sent out to the committees and to the committee members, and I know I sent them to Andrea when she first came on, that you wanted to see some documentations, and it was the cost estimates. And I think from my, this is just Bob Ross's perspective, the cost estimates got us the number. And when I didn't peruse them, like line item by line item, I just kind of got a general feel for where the heavy cost centers were within that, approximately $5 million. But I think what yesterday's walkthrough with the group really showed to me, or illustrated to me, in that I'm projecting out to the committee, and I've had this discussion with Steve already, is that, I'll just use the analogy. There's 100 items in the HVAC system that need to be addressed, or that make up the HVAC system. So there's 100 items. In the scope of work and in the design, we may be only touching 80 of those items. And I just want to make sure that we're clear that, you know, we identify whatever work we're going to do, we understand in cost and in the nature and what the deliverable would be on that. So for instance, it was a little disconcerting in that we were having a discussion with the engineers and they're carrying the total cost for all DDS controls. And we weren't really, we may have had some awareness of it, but not that level of awareness. Is that a good summary of that, Steve?
Yep.
Because that means something to us internally. And so I think what it really showed is that, you know, we've got to come back together, you know, once we have that whole, if you will, a bill of lading of everything that's going to be done, and that we are, the committee is unified and understanding, yeah, that's what we want to be done. Something as simple as, you know, the thin tube baseboard heating, if we're not going to touch that, the 9 people on this call should all be in agreement that, yeah, we agree we're not going to touch that. Because that
Yeah,
means,
and so,
means stuff to
Bob,
us.
that's a really good point, and that's part of the process, making sure that everybody's clear on what's being done. In order for us to submit schematic design, now it's done in a portal. Part of the information we need to submit is a sign off from the committee that they approve the schematic design. So we expect to have lengthy discussions with you to make sure that from an engineering point of view, it's clear what we're replacing, why we're replacing it, what we are not replacing, and why we're not replacing that. And we expect to go through a very thorough review with all the committee members to make sure that all that is clear.
When are we expecting that to happen?
I would say that we're probably 2-3 weeks away from that.
Okay.
So it's important to do it, of course, with plenty of time to be able to respond to any issues that are raised, but also it needs to be done before we submit to RIDE, because part of the submittal is your approval of what we're submitting.
Yeah, I would just say when we're approaching it, I'm sure you were going to do this anyway, but just send out all the documentation to the committee so we can at least try to review it beforehand and not have a 5-hour phone call.
That sounds good. You know, some of this engineering issues are tough, but we'll try to explain it clearly. The other thing that we want to make sure, because I know Wright is going to bring this up, is what we have done in light of the COVID situation and what systems we have improved and enhanced as part of this project.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll just say this, just for the better of the core, everybody on there. It's and I took a picture of the air handling unit in the junior high gymnasium, and it's in a labyrinth of support structures and piping and etc. And so whether they're going to drop that in totality or they're going to take it out in piece, you know, those are things I want to flesh out, because, you know, I want to understand that, you know, if we get to the point where we think if the cost estimate is we're going to, in the timeline is we're going to disassemble in place and lower this thing 100 feet to the floor, fine. But if we get up there on day one and say, there's no way to disassemble this, we've got to now take out what's around it and then lower it as one piece. I'm going to push really hard on that, or ask the OPM to push hard on that, because I'm not going to have a lot of tolerance for change orders on this, on that kind of thing. And this thing is, people who have been in that school and have looked at it, their access and is tough in that school, and the compartments are small and etc. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, so we absolutely expect the OPM to be fully engaged in that, but but moreover is the involvement of the commissioning agent. The reason why Wright requires them to come and start performing their services at the design is to address issues like that. So they'll do also a very thorough review, and we'll integrate all of those constructability issues into our specifications.
Okay, well, speaking of the OPM and the commissioning agent, are you saying something, Bob?
Got the mute button. My family would have loved that growing up. So the milestones, OPM, I issued an RFP for the OPM, went out to 5 different project management companies: Colliers, Peregrine, Downs, Keogh, and Jacobs. 4 responded. 1 was an incomplete response. We have a high of 109 and a low of 43, and then 2 in the high 70s. And I got all the information today and compiled it. And I really think, it might be worth having Steve, the superintendent, maybe Jeremy, because there is a component to this about, the controls and the electronic part of it, of this project, and sit down and interview the 2 that are in the sweet spot in that 70,000 range, and make a recommendation back to the committee.
That sounds
Yeah,
good. Have we moved on from what we talked about last time?
Say that again?
Does that mean we moved on from the discussions we had in our last call about just hiring a project manager locally?
Yeah, we've moved off of that. This is, we're gonna need horsepower and resources to make sure we're hitting all our marks on this. The timeline and the scope of the magnitude of the money is pretty significant. You're trying to cover, almost $750,000 to $1 million a month once we put the shovel in the ground. That's going to take some resources to keep people moving on that.
These guys are going to have to draw on resources when they hit problems, and they've got it.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't asking you to justify it. I was just checking.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So that's where we are with that. In the prices are surprisingly very good. Significantly less than I had thought they would be. So well within budget.
All right. And the commissioning agent?
So the commissioning agent, I just reached out to Steven Turner, who we've used, and I think they're great. Their deliverables are awesome, and I think they're a low impact to Steve and his team. They don't waste our time, and they do a great job, and they have a great deliverable in their closeout documents. So, and I know that all of the OPMs have worked with Turner, so I just reached out to them, made them aware, kind of gave them the timeline, and they've got, I wanted to give them enough time to build capacity into their schedule and their resources, and they're all set to go, and they're very, they're honored to be, to be thought of the way that we do think of them. So that should be all good. I think we got to sew up the OPM in the commissioning agent kind of in one bundle. Is that good, Lou? Or do you think if we're going to go with Turner, is it get them on board sooner or after we appoint the OPM?
It could be at the same time as the OPM. We still have a little homework to do and due diligence that that I think gets us about a week. So if in a week or so you were to get the OPM and the commissioning agent, that would be good. I think one of the first tasks that we would want the OPM to do is to schedule a meeting with RIDE. We want to meet with them right at the onset of the design to make sure that their expectations are met and there's no surprises as we submit. We want to streamline the whole submittal process and review process as much as possible. So we want to make sure that we keep them abreast of everything that we're doing.
One thing I can't stress enough, and you need to get it done. You need to get a preliminary schedule on the table quickly. I mean, this thing is going to be very dynamic, and you really need to understand where your bottlenecks are and start working to smooth those out.
Roger that.
And I'll just, for full disclosure, the OPM and the commissioning agent, they're on the master price agreement. And, it's within our purview just to pick one and say, we're ready to go if they're willing to do the work for us. We've gone to another, by issuing the RFP, it's just another level of due diligence. And, with the commissioning agent, we did that due diligence prior, and Turner was very, they were the low cost competitor, and we've built a relationship with them. Certainly Steve knows them. So I think that should go pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but I agree with your previous comment, Bob, that you, Jim, Steve, and Jeremy need to have an interview with the two candidates, find out, which one can support the schedule the best, which ones, can devote the most resources to this thing. Because if you guys run into a problem, they've got to have a resource down the hall they can pick on right away to resolve it. You don't have any wiggle room, really. So
I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to talk to them about, for sure, because the timeline on this is so important. The implications of not having this done before the winter season.
Yeah.
So I think you're spot on with that.
I think the best thing you guys can do is pick October 1st as your drop dead date, knowing you probably got 2 weeks before you're really in trouble. And with whatever you know now, just start building that schedule, and then, turn that right over to the OPM when you get there, even if it's just done in Excel so they know what you're thinking, and, then start working to refine it.
Good.
All right.
We can I can send out the emails to the two, and we can set something up. I'll set something up. We already covered the enacting legislation. So.
Yep. So do we need to meet prior to when we're going to have the technical meeting in 2 to 3 weeks to appoint the OPM and commissioning agent, or are we talking about doing all that at the same time?
I think it would be good to have the OPM and the commissioning agent on board before that. I was thinking of more of this process could take a week, but we would really want to engage with them, engage with RIDE right away. So I don't know if you are required to meet, or if the recommendation of the subcommittee and then everybody votes electronically. I don't know, but we need to engage them.
I mean,
in a week and a half.
I'm comfortable, knowing what the two numbers are, and they're only a couple $1,000s apart. I'm comfortable with, if Bob, Jim, Steve, and Jeremy are comfortable with the selection, turn them loose.
I'm okay with that as well.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I'm going to try and set those up for Monday. We could have a decision Monday afternoon, make the school committee aware on Tuesday night we meet, and, we'd have them engaged, the OPM and the commissioning agent engaged. school committee aware, building committee aware, then that would be by Tuesday and next, Wednesday morning and next week, all parties would know.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Do we want to try to pick a date, or do you want to send us an email in a week or two when you know better when we're going to be ready?
Is this, go ahead. Lou.
I would rather wait to let you know, to make sure that we have time to send you the documentation. You have a little while to review it, and then we'll need to discuss it. But it certainly will be within that window.
Okay. All right. Anything else that we need to cover? Good. All right. Well, that was painless.
It makes up for the last one.
James, it hasn't been a painless minute in like a year here.
Hey, you gotta suffer some pain to get to the good stuff.
Nah, you gotta love this work. All right.
All right, guys. Well, I guess we're adjourned.
All righty, have a good night.
Thanks.
Have a good night,
Thank you
everyone.
all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care.